Stand by. And now it is time for the preacher, the pastor, and the preacher's kid, I should say. Opinions expressed are those of the show hosts, not WSTU or Treasure Coast broadcasters. Any reproduction or reuse of this program without written consent of WSTU is strictly prohibited. And now let me introduce the hosts of our show, Pastor Dino and Trayvon. And good morning or good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello
Thank
there.
you. It's great to be on and good to see you, my friend. You run up and down the highway quickly to get here, and welcome.
Yeah, I did. I I really did.
Well, the theme today is going to be what some of the theme of February is. It's going to be on love today. So we have some good things to talk about with love. And I guess the theme would be learning to love. I remember years ago, Trayvon, I had a man come to see me at our church, and he was a young man that had been attending church, and he wanted to get some counseling. So he sat down with me. We were chatting, and he said to me, "I don't understand this thing about love that you're talking about. How can you love people you don't even
Very
like?"
loud.
And I remember he sat there looking at me and kept on talking. He said, "Do you mind if I tell you who I don't like?" And I said, "Well, if it helps." He said, "I don't like you. That's who I don't like." And he was
Oh,
speaking
wow.
about me. Well, we worked through it after a while and became good friends eventually. But love is a very interesting thing. A little girl was asked one time, Traven, how do you stay married? And she said, well, the husband needs to make sure she doesn't forget his wife's name. Not bad advice, you
That's
know that.
pretty good.
So tell us a little bit what the program is about today, Traven. Learning to love.
Yeah, learning to love. We were going to talk about what I call, I guess, the four basic types of love, and I think there might be even some extensions of that. But I'm going to go to you as the old pro to really talk about that, and more so about God, the Father's love, and what I call maybe unconditional love. I know people use that term quite a bit about unconditional love, but for me, I think that's really God's love. I don't. I look at a lot of situations. I'm like, I think there's always conditions, So even with some of our kids and our grandkids, sometimes we like, I love you, but there are times I want to choke you, but that type of thing. But I'll have you talk about that. But we were going to do this program last week. We had a little technical difficulty. We were going to do it on Valentine's Day. But I'm glad to see that Rob and Denise Drolick have come back to join us, and I'm hoping that they're still in love. But we'll talk about that, and we're going to ask them a series of questions and get their response for some people that have been married for some time. And again, my assumption is you're still in love, but we're going to maybe determine that as we go through the program. But maybe we would start, Pastor, with having you maybe lay out the four types of love and a little distinction of each of those on what they mean.
Yeah, back in the days of our Lord Traven, there was a Roman world that was the Roman Empire. The world was ruled by Rome. And then also we had a Jewish world, which was a very religious world. But then there was the Greek world. And the Greeks brought with them philosophy. And the Greeks brought with them also a very distinct language. And there were four kinds of love that were mentioned back then. The first kind of love is a love that is called storge love. And storge love is really a love that's not based upon how someone looks, but it's based upon a relationship. And it really speaks about our relatives. For example, if we have a family reunion and bring all the family together and discuss things, we're not so concerned so much about how they look, but we know them. We're familiar with them. And I know when we have Italian family reunions, they're very unique. Everybody talks, nobody really listens, and we eat a lot of food, but we have a good time. But I often think about we just hug each other, and once in a while we say, "Who was it I just hugged?" Because we're not even sure who they were. But that's what storge love is. Then there is also what is called this idea of eros love. Eros love was an erotic love. It was a sensual love. It was a sexual love. And back in the Greek days, they believed as well that the proper erotic love was in a marriage with a man and a woman. And then there was phileo love. Phileo love was that brotherly love, that love that extends maybe to brothers in Christ or brothers at a lodge or brothers and sisters who have a good relationship as dear friends. Maybe it's the two ladies going out to lunch and talking about life in general. And then, of course, there was the agape love. Now, many believe the agape love was developed by the Apostle Paul, but that's not really accurate. It goes back 5 centuries before Christ. It was back during the days of Plato, and it was actually came out of Greek mythology to begin with. But in the Bible, that word is used a lot, speaking about godly love. It's that unconditional love that God gives to us. So you have storge love, which is the love of the relatives. You have the erotic love, the eros love, which is the love of a man and a woman, both sensually and sexually. We have the phileo love, which is a beautiful love of relationships between brothers and sisters who may not be related physically. And then we have agape love, which is God's given love, that wonderful love that God has provided for us. And of course, the great chapter of the Bible, Traven, in that subject is 1 Corinthians 13. And we've been studying that at the church over this last month. In fact, Sunday, I'll finish that series on a passage called the activity of love. So that's the 4 kinds of love that are in the scripture, very distinctly given to us. The storge love only is found one time in scripture. It's a compound word found in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. The phileo love is found many times. Erotic love is not found in the scriptures themselves, but it was during that age. And of course, agape love is found many, many times in scripture.
Well, I know you'd have a very clear and concise answer, so I'm impressed. That's incredible. Now, the storge love, when you were talking about the Italian family, I get that because all the Italian people that I've ever been, involved with, or even the Greeks, actually, very warm, very inviting. They show their love, they show their appreciation. My family was a lot of English and or Irish, and they too were pretty friendly, but especially if they've had a drink or two, they can at least be pretty friendly. But my wife's family, primarily German, and it's interesting, we were dating. She'd say, we're having a family reunion, and I'd be like, okay. So I would go to family reunions with them, and typically it would be on one of the farms in the Midwest, a big to-do, everybody would show up. But what was interesting about the German family, again, I'm just talking their family, could be other German families may not be like this, but growing up in Ohio, and I know Rob and Denise did too, and there's a big preponderance of German, Polish, Yugoslavian people from Eastern Europe, especially in Cincinnati and Cleveland. But my wife's family, you would go there, and she said, we got to go. It's a big thing. And we would go, and each of the families, even though they were cousins, they would literally sit at their own table. Like my wife's family would sit at their table. Then her cousins, they would sit at their table, and they would pass each other and say, hi, hi, hi. And they may pass each other in the food line and say, hi, hi, hi. But they really did not communicate. So after a while, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm missing something. So after we would get home, I'd say, okay, so I understand the family reunion. I understand the value of getting together, but you realize you guys didn't talk, right? She goes, yeah, that's kind of the way it is in our family. So now over the years, they seem to lighten up a little bit, but it's interesting. The cultures are even different.
They really are.
I mean, it's crazy.
I know with our Italian families, when they get together, it's all kinds of chaos, really. Everybody says they're having a good time, and I believe they are, but nobody really listens. They just talk, and the food is all over the place, and somebody will ask you a question. By the time you're answering it, they're on to somebody else with another conversation. But really, part of that's just the excitement of the relatives seeing each other, I think.
Yeah,
they don't mean anything by it. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Rob and Denise's take might be on, because they grew up in the Midwest also, like I did, and whether or not they, what their experience was in dealing with family, gatherings, if you will, or even just friends, maybe the different cultures, and how you guys, your perception was.
Well, I have a background much like yours, Trayvon, and what I experienced was similar to yours. Within the confines of our immediate family, there was lots of affection, but within the realm of the larger family, it was we got together, but there wasn't the same kind of affection. It was much like you described, a time to be together, and it was joyous, but there wasn't a lot of hugging and kissing and exchanging really important information.
Yeah.
Mm.
Rob, what about you?
Well, it depends on who I was married to.
Yeah. Good answer. Yeah.
In my first marriage, it was Italian, and boy, just like Pastor Dino, it was a party with homemade wine and on and on and on. And they had grandma who was 100 years old, and
Sure.
it was quite the event. But what was interesting, talking about grandma, I could go on and on, but talking about grandma, people would come in to see her, and she came over in a boat in the late 1800s, and the young cousins and all, they would come and they sit down and say, "Hey, grandma, how you doing?" And she go, "Fine." And then they would come and be very respectful to her, even though they really had nothing in common. When you're talking to someone who's like 15 versus like 100, there's like nothing.
Sure.
But anyway, the other marriage, it was, well, the current marriage, not the other, the current marriage.
I
he needs to
thinking
tell
this
us
is the last one.
We asked you how it was going when you came in.
We don't have that extended family like that they did.
Sure.
So it's pretty much to ourselves, except for friends we bring in for different events, church friends or friends from the community, for a holiday, but that's kind of rare. We spend it with, and then there are some other family members who might fly in and all, but it's on the small side.
Yeah, Denise hit on something like Sandy's family. Her father passed away when he was 61. Really great guy, but German, very German. But I noticed once the German family gets to know you, you're kind of in. Then you're okay. But you kind of got to work your way in, And then her mother, who was part German and part Irish, actually, she remarried an Italian gentleman, and he just was so loving and so much fun, And even into his 80s, he was just so much fun to be with, Everything you did with him, he showed his love. He would hug you, he would kiss you on the cheek, and Sandy's father was never like that. He's like, "Hi, how are you?" He would shake your hand. It's like, but just difference in people. The cultures are different. Now, I think some of that's changing, because they came from the old world, and that's changing.
Well, I have to tell you
somewhat,
that Italian family I was referencing earlier, when I first entered the family, all the men would go down to the basement and they would smoke, and then they would drink wine, homemade wine they made from the press, and about everyone spoke Italian.
Wow.
And they would tell jokes, and I was out in the dark. I don't know, and I said, laughing about me,
Well, that old saying: if you're not, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably on the menu. Right?
I felt like I was at the little kids' table there.
Yeah, that's right.
Traven,
So sorry about that. We got off on a tangent. didn't we?
Speaking about the Germans, though, the first church I pastored, I was there 25 years. A lot of them were Germans, and it took a while to get in the crowd. It really did. They were very nice. They were very respectful, but it took, I would say, 4 or 5 years to really fit into the crowd.
Yeah,
and then you're in.
Yeah, because you were in Pennsylvania, so
Pennsylvania,
Chambersburg. So I'm thinking a lot of German Dutch,
people, Bavaria type of situation. Yeah, it was very, very interesting. Now, when I left after 25 years, they're why are you leaving us? They don't want you to leave then. But yeah, it's a little different cultures with all of it.
And the brotherly love thing's interesting because you can see that in camaraderie, like especially in like team sports. That's kind of a cool thing. Or if you work with a company that you've worked with a number of people for years, you do build that camaraderie. But I have to tell you, I've been to Philly a couple. There's a lot of brotherly love. Matter of fact, there's times I'm like, so, but that's a
Phileo and Philadelphia. That's where the word comes from. Yeah, the Phileo love.
Yeah, so it's but hey, hats off to Philly. They won one. Good for them.
Yeah, that's exactly
them,
right.
That's
exactly right. We always join in with them now.
Right. So I don't know if you had any other comments.
Well, the other thing I would want to say, sometimes when we talk about love, and we've got some questions we're going to go over with Rob and Denise here. I think will be a lot of fun here in a moment. But I've heard these thoughts on love, Traven, that you often can tell what you love by two things. First of all, look at your checkbook or where you put your money. where you put your money. Now, I know we have mortgages. I know that we have bills we have to pay, but that excess money, where we put that money, often talks about what we love. Then secondly, look at our schedule. Where do we go? What do we do? I have grandchildren, as you know, in the area. And when they call me and say, Grandpa, will you? The answer is yes. I don't know what they're doing, but the answer is yes, because I want to be with them. And I think your checkbook and your schedule often talks about what really constitutes the things that you really care about. And of course, time together with those that you love and that you care about as well. I think it's one of the beautiful things about our church. It's such a close-knit community there of people.
Yes.
And it's a joyous time to be together with all of them.
And we have wonderful people who are givers and support the ministry, which is terrific. I noticed when you're talking about the checkbook, though, it made me think about the things I care too much about. Is lately, guitars. I've probably bought too many guitars. I went to 2 or 3 guitar stores today with my brother, and I'm like, I do not need another guitar, but it's still fun.
It's
to have
hobbies,
that.
though. Those are good things.
Yeah, those are good.
Absolutely.
Those are good things.
Sure.
But yeah, so we were fortunate to have Rob and Denise come on, and they've agreed to go through kind of a little fun session with us. And I asked each of them if they would write down 3 or 4 things that they admire in each other, and we can do it. We can do that first to start, and then the other thing I asked them to do is to write down what they think their partner would say about them that they think that they would admire. I did this with my wife actually recently, and I told her, and it's pretty interesting, to go through that exercise. So maybe we start with like Denise, to have you kind of tell Rob. My assumption is you have 3 or 4 things that you admire about Rob, but maybe
Yeah, I
tell
thought
Rob.
long and hard,
you
but I'm
tell him,
ready.
You didn't tell him before, right? He doesn't know, right?
This is a secret.
So he's going to start blushing. So
well, hopefully he doesn't start crying.
But
So
I thought this would be fun to do this. This would be fun exercise. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Denise.
Okay. Well, actually, this was a real blessing to do this, because it's things that I think about in passing, but I put all my thoughts together, and I came up with the 4 C's because I like to be organized. And so I'll first tell you what the 4 C's are, and then I'll tell you, honey, what they mean to me. Okay. So the 4 C's are, my wonderful husband is curious. He's a communicator. He's caring, and he's committed. So those were my
Very
4
good.
things. And as far as the curiosity is concerned, is Rob sees every day as an adventure. He seeks new activities and endeavors, and sometimes it drives me nuts. He takes some calculated risks, but he's resourceful and protective in that curiosity. So because of that characteristic, he's added adventure to my life that never would be there. I'm a pretty conservative woman from a very kind of structured family. And so we've done some things that I never dreamed I would ever do because of Rob. And then the next thing is he's a communicator. He's very easy to talk to. And I think the gentleman here would agree to that. He shares ideas and feelings easily, and he engages thoroughly. So when you're talking to him, he's fully engaged with you. And then he's caring. Rob's a very kind-hearted person. He genuinely cares about people and is interested in them. And at the same time, he's very honest with people about where he's coming from. And he has a really good sense of humor. So that makes caring an enjoyable thing. And then he's committed. I know that he's devoted to me, and he's trustworthy, and he daily shows his love in words and in actions. He always tells me that he wants to make my life better.
That's fantastic.
So-
That's pretty great.
It's beautiful, Denise.
Boy, that is
Wow.
very organized.
That's where she is, isn't it?
Boy, oh boy, where do I start?
Yeah, Rob. So it's pretty fantastic, actually. But what are you kind of thinking and feeling right now after hearing this? That's a beautiful commentary. And by the way, I agree with her. I think she's just fantastic. I think
Yeah.
you definitely are a great communicator. You do care about others. So
Mhm.
everything she said is absolutely true.
Well, it's very humbling hearing all that, you
Good.
know, but she makes me want to be a better man.
Mhm.
Good.
You know, I mean, I married up, no doubt about it. So,
Good,
and
good.
I know that, you
You know,
know.
the other thought I was having is maybe we don't tell each other these things enough on a consistent basis.
Mhm.
We kind of take each other for granted. Well, all of us are guilty of it.
Mm.
We have these thoughts, but sometimes we don't communicate them. Maybe we need to do more of that.
That's exactly right,
So-
Traven. You
so-
know, as you were saying those things, Denise, Rob sits in a couple of Bible studies I have in a week, and Rob really is deep in the Word. He really is. He comes up with stuff. There's 3 or 4 guys in that group who are very much like that, Rob. And
Mm.
I start off with the thing, and you guys just kind of take it away into a whole different area, which is beautiful, really. And I can see all of that. You know, we got 2 minutes to go here before our break, Traven. I want to say, to you, I appreciate all of these sponsors that we do have,
Yes.
and they have been such a blessing to us. They really have. And so maybe the next part we ought to just hold till after the break so we can get through it with them.
Yeah.
And I think that way we won't have to break it up here. But I do want to say this about what you said, Denise, about Rob. I do think those kind of things in settings should be said often. And hearing you say that, that clicked in my mind. That's a good thing for all couples to do. And I'm hoping that many who are listening into our program right now would be thinking about that kind of a conversation. I'm on the end sometimes when people come to me because things aren't going well. And they sit down and we talk about what's taking place. And probably if that kind of thing was said about the other person and that person had said something about them like that, we may not need to have a very long session.
Correct.
Because we forget the blessing that we have in life, and life is a blessing. You have a wonderful wife. I know that too, Traven. I have a wonderful wife. My wife has been on a cancer journey for over 20 years now, and she has been. The children look at her as like a hero in the family. The way she's been able to handle all of that. So
Yeah.
that's a great thing. So thank you, Denise, for putting it together like that. And you're a leader. I sit in some of the meetings you have, and I love the way you lead a meeting. Here's the point. Let's find out what we're going to do about it. Let's do it. Let's get on to the next point. I love that in a meeting. I don't like to walk on a meeting saying, what are we doing? I've never been in a meeting that you've been in. I bet come out of there saying, what are we doing? I know what's going to happen.
I think we all married up is what you're talking
Yeah, we all married way over our heads is what we did,
I'm
which was
about.
not afraid to mention it. You know?
Right. Yeah, so we'll get to Rob. Rob, you get to go as soon as we come off the break. So
Sure.
that'll be great.
yeah.
You
Okay.
know, but yeah, you can. I guess we can break it any time. So it'd be great. That's
And now we'll return you to the pastor and the preacher's kid.
Yeah, again, we're back. That's great. So before we kind of jump back into the program, I did want to acknowledge our sponsors. We could not do this without their help, and so we're greatly appreciative of them. But first of all, I want to acknowledge John McDonald, who's a certified public accountant. He's my accountant. He's fantastic. He's over in Palm City. He can be reached at 772-221-8882. Again, give John, hey, we're in the season, tax season, so if you need help with your taxes, he's the man. Give him a buzz. He's great. Also, Margaret Wood goes by Peggy. I've worked with Peggy for a long time also. She's with McCarthy Summers, a great firm here in town. She can be reached at 772-286-1700. Again, 772-286-1700. Peggy Wood. She's great for estate planning, wills, those types of things. If you had anything for elder care, she also has people there on her team that can help in that regard. Also want to thank Paul Piatti, Home Improvements. He's great. He's a member of the church and also in the choir, great singer. He wouldn't admit to that, but he is. He's great. He can be reached at 772-215-3762. Again, 772-215-3762. Also, gentlemen that we have the privilege of attending church with is Larry Grubb, and he's with Two Anchors Plumbing. Larry can be reached at I lost his number, but Larry can be reached at direct number 772-201-3516. Again, 772-201-3516. Or you can reach his partner, Tom, again, and Tom can be reached at 772-210-2084. Again, reach out to them. They're fantastic. Other sponsor is Deb Hollister. If you're looking for group insurance, any kind of medical insurance, Deb's great, her and her team. She can be reached at 772-288-2389. Again, 772-288-2389. And I have a couple more, and I apologize, but we do want to recognize our sponsors. Pools by Greg. Been really designing and building custom pools for 40 years. He's just a terrific guy, a devout Christian. I've had the privilege of speaking with him. But you can call Terry Wicks. He's at 772-370-5025. Again, 772-370-5025. Terry Wicks. He's awesome. So give him a buzz if you need your pool repaired or you need a pool built. And also another friend of ours is Sandra Barnett. I also sing with her in the choir, but she also handles and works with Sunny Coast Landscape. If you need some landscaping done, landscaping design, any type of work, Sandra's terrific. They too have been doing this for 40 years. So these are professionals. Sandra can be reached at 772-215-0940. Again, 772-215-0940. And we have other members of our congregation and friends of the church that also have been sponsors, but we'll take another time to do that. So we want to be conscientious of the time.
And we want to remind
Thanks.
everybody also to come to the church, 3110 Esther Lane, Stewart. And this Sunday, we're continuing and completing our series on love. Choir will be singing a couple of great numbers. It's a great church, a lot of refreshment afterwards. We have fellowship. Please come and see us. And our Stewart Congregational Church is very, very behind this program that we're doing right now, and thrilled that we're on. Well, I'm ready to hear the next part of this.
Yes, Rob.
Okay.
Now it's your turn.
I'm up. I'm up.
Okay, you're
Well,
up.
I kind of took a little bit different slant in that I listed a lot of the qualities that I love in her. And also there are a lot of qualities other people would identify with her. So, when I met her 40 years ago, I went into this work situation and everyone was raving about this young Denise and how smart she was and knowledgeable she was and on and on and on. So finally I got to meet her, and she was what people said, very articulate, tall, redheaded, and everything. When she walked into a room, she got attention. But anyway, as I got to know her, first of all, she is very articulate and she says what she means, that kind of thing. And but she has a lot of wisdom, and I certainly appreciate that in her. She can really sort things out very, very well, very, very quickly. In fact, for a long time, her friends have gone to her for advice, even when she was in college. And sometimes we would be somewhere and they go to Denise for advice. I said, hey, I'm the psychologist. She's just a natural at problem solving. She's just wired for problem solving.
It's awesome.
So anyway, but what a lot of people don't know about her is that she's almost like twofold. Has a very serious problem solving, serious side, but then she is a real cut up.
Yeah.
And she's always laughing, and we talk a lot at home, and we laugh a lot and tell jokes and cut up and stuff like that. So
Sure.
we have that part of our relationship is real strong. But, frankly, we thought about our relationship because we both come from, previous marriage, didn't want to make a mistake again. So we really built it on communication. And we read a lot of the popular books of the time, you know, The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, and we attended some of his training, and we were affected by a number of other authors, and really was determined not to make mistakes again. So we really worked on communication, you know.
That's vital.
Yeah, but there's other, you know, other features, I should say. She's very, anything Denise gets involved in, she's 110%. She is so thorough. You know, it's just amazing. She thinks through every detail. Her brain is just wired for that. And it's kind of just fun to see her work sometimes, as long as she doesn't pull me into it.
Got to be on the team.
Usually there's a chore in there somewhere for me. But anyway, she's a very, very strong woman. And I'm not just saying it, everyone knows that.
Yes.
And a very unique individual. And I really realize how blessed I am to have her in my life. I really am.
It's beautiful, Rob.
So, you know, I just have tremendous respect for her, and I'm extremely proud of her.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Denise, what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Well, of course, it's good to hear it. Rob's pretty good about saying nice things about me to me. I think that is one of the strengths of our marriage is that we do express to each other what we appreciate about each other pretty regularly, hopefully enough.
Almost daily.
And we certainly talk about loving each other every day. That a day doesn't go by.
And we
don't.
we hug every day.
We do.
Every single day. You know.
Good.
We do.
That's fantastic. That's you're doing a lot of things right.
I'm sure there are many listeners are blessed by this today. Thank you. I think that was great what you said, and I know you both, and I would say amen to every bit of it. I think.
Yeah,
But I'd like to add one thing we learned years ago, and I think it was Scott Peck who said this. He talked about love in that one chapter, and I really should have reread it for this, but I do remember kind of the essence of it, and is that love just isn't a feeling, it's an action. You have to take action. You have to be what's the word? You have to be intentional. You have to be very intentional.
Yeah.
You know,
you made me think of when I was younger. I met an old timer in our business, and he said to me, he says, "Do you love your wife and kids?" I said, "Well, of course I love my wife and kids." And he said, "Do you tell them?" I said, "Probably not often enough." He said, "You need to tell them, and you need to show them." And I thought, wow, you know what? That's good advice. So I made a point to do that. Hug your kids, hug your wife, tell them that you love them, because you know what? They need it.
I mean,
Right.
while you should do it, you almost have to work on making it a habit. You know,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it's a habit.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So that was great for you guys to share that, because like Pastor said, and I'm sure you touched a lot of hearts out there. So that's fantastic.
Wow.
Now, on the other side, we were asked to maybe write down what you think each one would say about you. You know, what you thought what they would think about you, or the commentary they may give about this. So Denise, I'll let you go.
Okay,
First.
goody, because I'm glad to go. I got one right. I put that he wrote that I think things through and that I'm a problem solver. But he didn't say that I'm a happy person and I try to see the positive in situations.
That was implied.
It was implied. Okay.
Good thinking, Rob.
And I wanted to say one other thing, because listening to this is that a big part of our relationship is forgiveness.
Yeah, good.
I wrote that down. See?
I see it. It's actually written there.
I'm not just saying that.
I mean,
it
it's
down.
just essential, because we make mistakes and we do stupid things. It's a part of being a human being, and we don't let things linger. We make sure we address an issue and get to the forgiveness part. So
If I can add, I'm sometimes so amazed that you don't hold a grudge. She just drops stuff. You know, we might have a, argument about something, and then next thing it's over. It's just over. She says, I don't think about things like that anymore. It's just
Very
Done.
forgiving.
oh boy.
That's a blessing. Really.
Yeah, because sometimes I'll think 2
Especially-
hours later
especially
she's
your
still got to
wife,
be
you know?
mad at me. And what'd you say? I'm sorry.
Especially if your wife forgives you that quick. That's a
Oh,
blessing.
So let me ask you a question, and I don't care which one of you answers it. I think a listener might want to ask. This is wonderful what you said about each other, but did you grow into this, or did this just happen? Do you feel? Was this a growing process? You've been married how long now? How many years?
Almost 38.
Almost 38 years. Okay. So was this like growing for 38 years that did this? Was it something that just kind of fell into place, or is it a combination of both?
Probably a combination of both. There was certainly an attraction at first that was real strong. And we felt like we were special together. We just thought we were very lucky to have each other right from the get-go. But of course, as you're married, you learn different aspects of love. It just gets deeper and deeper because you go through more challenges. And when you go through those challenges, it's just builds on your love.
That's
You
awesome.
know,
You get to know each other, don't you, over those years? Yeah. I told the story in church the other day of a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Paul Griffiths, who was one of my professors in college, and his wife got Lou Gehrig's disease. And my wife and I went to visit them, and she was in bed, and she was very crippled up. And they were watching I Love Lucy. And they said, we're going to watch I Love Lucy, then we can talk. So we watched the rest of it. But during the I Love Lucy episode, I noticed that she was looking up at him and she was kind of wiggling her nose. And he reached down and he scratched her nose and he stopped and she looked up and kind of winked at him that was the right spot. And I thought, what a beautiful picture of growing in love over an extended period and a very simple thing like that. And I think that is true. I think it happens, it's instantaneous, but then it really is a growth. And now that you've been married 38 years, there are many things you know about each other that you just know. You just know what they are. And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's a real tribute for marriage, and congratulations on 38 years.
Yeah, we're blessed.
Fantastic.
But when you know what the other person's thinking and you say it, we all go through that, right? So.
Yeah.
So real quick, because we're going to run out of time. Real quick, what were your 3 things that you thought that Denise may say?
Well, I think she would say that I was sensitive. I'm a pretty sensitive person. And she might say I'm pretty flexible. I'm a flexible person. But I'm just not sure what else. I think the sensitive, responsible, things like that, I think she would say.
Good traits.
Mhm.
Good stuff. I think Denise touched on one thing I think is critical, not just in a marriage, but just in your relationship with people, is forgiveness. You just got to really work on that.
Yeah, I want to say to all of our listeners too, maybe you're traveling on the highway, husband and wife, maybe you could do this with each other, maybe on the way home on the trip you're on right now, or maybe later this evening you want to sit out and chat. Best times for my wife are when we just sit and we chat and enjoy each other, and they really do express so many things of how we feel toward each other.
So again, I know we're running out of time, but thank you so much for your willingness to come in and share. Our intent was not to embarrass you, but I think you did a great
You
job.
blessed
So
us.
thank you.
You blessed
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you. It was nice to be here.
It was fun.
Good.
And we'll be right back in 1 minute to the pastor and the preacher's kid. And now we return you to the pastor and the preacher's kid.
And Robin, Denise, I want you to think over this question and answer it in just a few moments here. If you had one bit of advice you'd give to our listeners tonight on a 38-year-old marriage, just what would that be? Something that really is very meaningful to both of you. So we'll think about that a moment, then we'll come back to you on that. Next week, Traven, I'm kind of excited about the program in this sense. You've been in the business of helping people with their finances for many, many years, and you and I meet usually every week on Tuesday. We spend an hour or 2 hours just talking about these programs and what we want to get done. And one of the things I have found in my experiences is that there are a lot of good people that have good families, good homes, but there's a heartache is that the money is always a problem, the dealing with money. And so I know next week we're going to talk to you about that. Tell us a little bit what we're going to be looking at on next week's program about finance. This has been your field. I know people you've been such a blessing to. Tell us just a little bit what kind of thing we'll be looking at.
Yeah, when I came into the business and the financial businesses back in the day, I really came in on the insurance side, and our concern was people would die prematurely. Younger people would die prematurely, maybe leave a spouse with young children. So our job was to protect that family, buy insurance and possibly disability insurance. So we were concerned about people, passing away. But now what I find is people are living longer due to modern medicine and hopefully maybe taking better care of themselves. So they're living longer. And one of the challenges in doing that is possibly running out of assets. So, I really deal with people with protecting them while they're getting there. But a lot of my clients now are in their seasoned. They're seasoned. And so while they've done a really good job in the accumulation phase of their financial planning is accumulating assets and preparing, which is critically important, but it's also critically important that you focus on the distribution phase. So we'll talk about that distribution phase is like when you get to a point. This week I had several appointments about this, and they'll say to me, like, where do I take the money from first? Do I take it from my IRAs? Do I take it from Social Security? Do I take it from my other investments? Where do I take my money? What pot do I use first, or a combination of pots of money? But again, equally important, the distribution phase, because we have to make sure that those clients do not run out of money. So we use what I call a conservative rate of return assumption, along with a rate of return on inflation. And so, and a lot of times people ask me, make sure the day I die that I have $1 left in my accounts. I said, well, can you tell me when you're going to die, the specific day? So, well, no, I can't tell you that. I go, right. So we have to plan for, really some, calculated risk, so to speak. So we look at mortality and those types of things, but you really have to plan for those types of things, so.
Traven, you say that my mother lived to be 91, and it was true. She went right down to her last dollar just about the day she died. It was unbelievable. She had other Social Security money coming in if she had to keep on living, but as far as the savings and all were concerned, that was pretty much the end of it. Well, let's go back to Rob and Denise for a moment now. And there's a verse in Scripture in 1 Corinthians 14:1, in that great section that talks about godly love, agape love that's given there. 1 Corinthians 13:31 or 12:31 through 14:1 all deals about love, and chapter 13 is in the middle of it. But there are two words in chapter 14 and verse 1. It simply says, pursue love. Pursue love. And the word pursue there means run after love. And of course, it's speaking there about the love that God has for us. But if there's one piece of advice, and Rob, I'm going to ask you to do this because Denise has gone first each time. So I'm putting you on the spot here.
Right.
What is the one piece of advice you would like to give to our listeners in a 38-year marriage now that you both have said God has really blessed it? What is one piece of advice that you'd like to give them?
Just to dovetail on what Trayvon says, you got to get your finance. You got to be on the same page financially. Usually one's a saver, one's a spender. You got to figure that out, and you have to have a plan. That's just very, very important, because if you have money problems, it's going to add to stress, and we know it leads to high incidence of divorce. So
well, that's a
big one right
that's
there.
a very interesting thought to give to our listeners today then. So you put that at the top of the list, that to get your finances in order. as your-
Well, it's very high, but getting a good Bible believing church is another one.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know, have both practicing your faith, whether it be Christian or whatever, and being on the same page, and being active in a church and reading the Bible. And I think that can help a lot of stress because there's so much wisdom in the Bible.
Yeah, I remember a couple years ago, it came on, well, maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was a commercial that says, a family that pray together, stay together. And there's a lot of truth in that, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Oh, I mean, I would say that. I mean, if this wasn't a Christian show,
sure, that's
I'd
right.
give that advice to anyone. I would,
That's right.
yeah.
You know, to your point is usually marriage is a couple of things. You guys know this, but and most of the people out there in radio land probably know this, is the two really stress points are differences in raising children
Mhm.
and differences in finances. So you really do need to have that discussion, I think, and also the beliefs. What are your beliefs and how do you practice it?
Well, there's training in both.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it gets you, you know, whether it be
And Rob, you've helped people financially, I know, as well, with their finances. But good. Denise, what about you?
Well, I think about communication as being a key thing, not letting things fester, and building up anger or grudges about things, but getting it out in the open and doing it before it escalates. Because I think the more you mull over something that's a problem between you and the other person, the bigger it gets in your mind. And so I think no matter what the issue is, whether it's about a work situation or spending or the children or whatever, is that you have to be able to talk about it and listen to the other person's perspective so that you can come to some kind of agreement about it. It's when things linger and don't get resolved that resentment finds its way in. And the other thing is that if you are having difficulties with those things, or sometimes even if you just anticipate a problem, is getting help, because there is help for almost everything. There's a book about it. There's a
podcast.
there's a podcast you can do,
Yeah,
can
yeah,
listen
me
to.
too.
Yeah.
But there's help for you.
Yeah.
So if you make your marriage a priority, then solving problems together should be a priority.
Yeah, that's good. So we said finances, and we said faith, and we said communication. Those are three really good things for our listeners to hold on to today. So thanks for being on, both of you. It's
It was
a great
fun.
joy. We had you on last time, Rob, with in the field that you're in, with dealing with some of the issues of anxiety and stress in life. And
Right.
it's been really good having you both on. Both of them are members of our church. Just say a word about our church, if you would, all right? The wonderful church that we have. Both of you just say a word about it.
Oh, go.
Well, I just want to say that the members of this church are overtly loving. When you enter our church, there is a genuine feeling of warmth, and that it's present in all of the activities, the church service. We spend a lot of time together, and there is enjoyment in sharing the word. Our Bible studies are excellent, and they help you get closer to the Lord. And once you do that, you get closer to the other people.
Yes.
Yeah, and to sum that all up, it's like a big family. And
Yes.
people who come to our church and they're asked about the church, they go, it's like a family here, you know? So there's eating and
Yes.
there's a lot of, you know, getting
And we have the
together.
best pastor.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad to be there. I'm honored to be. You were on the committee that brought me there, Denise. I remember that well. You were one of the first people I met at the church. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Had
yeah.
our first conversations.
We
that's
did.
That's when we knew
Yeah.
you were the one.
You know, it's interesting. I had people ask me about marriage and whatever, because we've been married 50 years, and I've had, you know, nieces, nephews ask me about marriage. I said, well, one of the things for me that's critical in a marriage is each of you have to have God first.
Mhm.
God comes first, and you're going to find that maybe unusual. You thought I would say each of you would become first. I said, no, God's first. If you put God first, then your husband or your wife is next, then the children, and then others.
Mhm.
But once you put God first and you make him a focus, there's a good chance your marriage is going to do pretty well. So
Mhm.
just keep that in mind. From my perspective, I think you got to stay focused on that. you
Yeah,
know.
that's great advice,
You know,
Draven. Great
excellent.
advice.
Mhm.
In the book of Corinthians, which is the passages that we've been studying on Sunday mornings at the church, uh, in the section that's just before the great love chapter, there were gifts of the Spirit that people were utilizing. And at the end of the love chapter, it shows us some more of those gifts of the Spirit. And it's interesting. And you've seen this at the church as we've gone through this. They were arguing about the gifts of the Spirit. They were
Mhm.
fighting literally at the Lord's table. Things were not going well. And so it's like in the midst of this, we have this incredible chapter that the Bible calls the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. And it begins by Paul saying there's a more excellent way. The way you're doing it just really isn't working very well. There's a more excellent way. And the word excellent there means like if you throw a ball and you say, I can throw it 20 yards and you throw it 50, you threw it way beyond. And the excellent way is that's so far beyond what's the norm when you have this love. And so it's great having you on talking in a very practical sense about that. And Traven, your input with your marriage is such a blessing to all of this. But again, I would say to all of us who are listening in, what Traven just said is so true, that the issue of love begins with our faith, and then goes to our family, and then it goes to friends and other things. But it begins with faith and then with family that really grows it. Are there any more people?
There are.
mention?
There's a
Yeah,
couple
go
of
ahead,
folks
yeah.
that have just been great to help our sponsorship. Is a good friend of Pastor Dino's, actually Homer, and you call him Mac.
Homer Mac McMillan.
McMillan. And Homer's an attorney, but he's also a pastor.
Mhm.
And he's just been so gracious to be one of our sponsors. But if you're looking for some legal advice, he can be reached at 850-459-1153. Again, 850-459-1153.
And he's
But-
registered through the whole state.
He's registered through the
Mhm.
whole state, and maybe he might even pray with you because he's a
Mhm.
pastor, right?
That's
So
absolutely.
might get a twofer there. So consider that.
Yeah.
Of course, our Pastor Dino is also one of our sponsors, so thank you, sir, for
Thank you.
doing that. And then Laura Zavataro and her husband John also stepped up and said, "Hey, they wanted to be a sponsor." And then yours truly, I'm one of the sponsors. I was at a restaurant yesterday and I met a gentleman, real nice guy here, and we were talking, and I said, "Hey, we got to talk about the church." And I said, "With Stewart Congregational," and he said, I need to find a good church. He runs a couple restaurants here. And I said, "Hey, by the way, we're looking for sponsors." He said, "Count me in. What do you need?" And I said, "I just, that X number of dollars." He goes, "Count me in." I'm in. I go, "Well, we're good now, but next time I'm going to call you." But we may have picked up a sponsor and a new congregant.
Oh,
very much.
wonderful.
So that's a good
That's
stuff.
great. That's
But
great.
again, thanks to all of our sponsors. It's terrific to have you.
Yeah, they are such a blessing to us, Traven. And when you and I and a group of people talked about doing this broadcast, we had nothing for it. We just by faith stepped out. And that's so often the way things are in the Christian life. We just simply step out and do it by faith. But that's the best way to do it when it's the end of the day. And now we have these sponsors and others are waiting to sponsor, really. So we're very, very thankful to God. Excited about next week's program, Traven.
Absolutely.
Bring all your good stuff. We're looking forward to it, my friend.
We'll do it. We'll have the guns loaded, so to speak. Okay. Hey, thanks, Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. You're the best, my friend. And Rob and Denise, thank you so much.
WSTU Stewart.